Thank you very much. Good evening. Today is Monday, March 15th, 2021. It's 6 o'clock, 6 p.m. And a special meeting of the Salem-Keizer School Board is called to order. The March 9th, 2021 board meeting was adjourned early due to technical problems that caused a break in the broadcast of the meeting to the public. A special board meeting was held March 11, 2021 for the purpose of concluding business that needed to be completed prior to March 15, 2021. An additional special meeting of the board is now being called for the purpose of concluding the remainder of business from March 9th board meeting. And that is the reason we are having this special board meeting. So I'm going to take attendance, and when I call your name, please acknowledge. Vice Chair Bethel.
Here.
Thank you. Dr. Marty Hine.
Here.
Dr. Blasi.
Here.
Dr. Lepol Pion.
Present.
Dr. Paul Kylo.
Here.
Dr. Kathy Goss. Director Goss, do anybody see her in the list? All right. And as soon as she joins, we will acknowledge her. Advisor Mabinton.
Here.
And Chair Satya Chandrakiri present as well. I'm going to request Director Lepol Pion to read the land acknowledgement. Dr. Lepol Pion, will you kindly read the land acknowledgement for us?
Sure, I would be honored to.
Thank you.
Acknowledgement is critical in building the necessary trust to coexist in harmony with one another. Indigenous tribes and bands have been apparent on the lands of the Willamette Valley, across Oregon, and throughout the Americas since time immemorial. In this valley, the ancestry of the Kalapuya reaches the furthest back in time, reminding us that this plentiful place has been called home by its original inhabitants long before the names of the snowy peaks and bountiful waters were re-identified. Today, we acknowledge that the people of this land still exist and inhabit this valley, not as heirs to it or artifacts, but as reciprocal contributors to the modern society we live in. We forward our respect to the first peoples of this land, the 9 federally recognized tribes of Oregon, and those who have ceded lands here. We reflect on the displacement, removal, and genocide of Indigenous people that occurred throughout Oregon and beyond. In so doing, we truly honor the gravity of the past and endeavor to see that people may live in harmony and equity on this land for posterity. May this acknowledgement carry renaissance as a tool of peace over the land and the waters we mutually rely upon. Please join us in uncovering such truths at any and all public events. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Lepol Pion. Will you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Dr. Sproles, can you show us the flag? Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. There are no agenda modifications today. So now we're going to take up the action items as part of the remainder of the agenda. Adopt resolution number 202021-3, converting election of school board members to a by zone system. Before we kind of go, I just want to briefly say this was one of the items that was left behind because we couldn't get time to do this because of technical glitch. It's very important that we wanted to make sure there's enough time and the community could really participate, keeping up with our equity principle. That's why we decided to have it today so that we can have a community can understand what we are discussing. So thank you for your understanding. Director Lepolpion, will you please share with us the resolution and we can.
Do you want me just to go over the resolution as it's written?
I guess let me ask Mr. Paul Dacopoulos. Dacopoulos,
thank you.
Would you weigh in how this has to proceed because it's a really important resolution and we need some clarity?
Well, just like all board resolutions, this will be put on the floor for the board to consider. It takes it needs to be moved and then seconded, and then there can be discussion. At the last meeting, I was prepared to talk about the legal aspects of this before the board debated this or had a discussion about it. And I'm happy to do that if that's your desire after it's moved and seconded.
Well, why don't we go through the resolution once it's moved, seconded, and to see if there is any other discussion from the board members. And then at any point of time, if they have a question of clarification, would you be kind enough to help us?
Yes, I'd appreciate, before you get too far into discussion, I'd appreciate just being able to give you some basic comments on the statutes that apply so that can help guide your discussion.
So we'll start with the resolution and we'll see if there's somebody to move the resolution, second it, and then we can probably, during the discussion, we could kind of let us know the legality of the statutes. Would that be an acceptable possibility? All right. Director Lepolpion.
Well, I would just say, I moved. So we have to move to do this first, and then we can have discussion. So I move that the board accept resolution number 202021-3, converting election of school board members to a by-zone system.
Second.
Now, we're going to open it up for discussion now. I'm going to start with, let's say, Director Hyen. Do you have, I'll go ask each one of you. This is an important resolution, so I want each one of you to see. So Director Lepolpion moves this resolution. It's seconded by Director Kylo. And Director Lepol, do you want to say anything else, or do you want to add anything else to help?
Yeah, I would like
I want to start with you. Sorry.
No problem. Thank you. Yeah, I would like to move the board to adopt an amendment to this resolution, just helping clarify the original intention of it. And it replaces the last paragraph of the resolution beginning with now therefore, and replace it with the following. And I've sent this out to all the previous board members already, so everybody should have it. Here's what it would say. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Salem-Keizer School Board recognizes the importance of this action and agrees to work with legal counsel and the county election offices of Marion and Polk counties to move to a system of school board election by zones. It is the intention of the school board that this change to board elections by zone be accomplished in time for May 2021 board elections, or as soon as possible as determined by state law and county election officials. Which basically just says, hey, we're going to try our best to get it done for this election cycle because we believe we do. If we can't, then we would do it the following election cycle.
I second the amendment.
Okay. I'll open it up for a discussion. I'm going to start with recognizing Director Hine. I made a mistake in the beginning. Sorry. Director Hine, you have raised your hand. Would you unmute and
Thank you, Chair Chandagiri. First, I have a statement to make, and then I'm going to, I believe I can ask for an amendment to the amendment, and our lawyer will have to verify that that's okay. The Salem-Keizer community, elected us, and it is our responsibility to set voting requirements for school board elections. The last time this was changed was just after the 2010 census. As I have stated on numerous occasions, I believe any changes require thoughtful consideration that allows the entire community to share their views. I believe we need our 2020 census data. We need school boundary information because currently any student on my street goes to North, but yet I represent McKay. And expert opinions on elections and your voices, the people of Salem-Keizer, to make a meaningful and equitable change to our voting. I received an email from Representative Evans threatening legislative action, HB 3323, if the board doesn't do what he wants us to do. I received a similar letter with different legislation being threatened regarding another topic several months ago. This is a targeted attack attempting to influence my vote. Micromanaging by a sitting legislator is nothing short of bullying. I'm feeling bullied right now. Representative Evans, you do not represent the entire Salem-Keizer community, and I will not be bullied. I will not take away the opportunity for our entire community to participate. So that said, I have an amendment. And Mr. Dacopoulos, is it okay for me to do an amendment to his amendment?
This can be the last amendment. There can be 2 orders of amendments. So you'd be moving to amend the amendment.
Okay, so I'm moving to amend the amendment, striking the now therefore paragraph or paragraphs with the following. And it's kind of long, I apologize. Now therefore, be it resolved that Salem-Keizer School Board recognizes the importance of this action and agrees to 1, undertake a comprehensive community process for public input that exceeds the public process requirements in House Bill 3310 of 2019 by including multiple town halls and inviting election experts to consider a zone-based and other additional best practice election improvements or reforms if needed based on the outcome of the community process. And I need a little drink, hang on. 2, work with legal counsel and the county election offices of Marion and Polk counties to move to a system of school board election by zones if determined by the community process. And that will also include a process for drawing zones using fair and measurable criteria to prevent political gerrymandering. 3, adopt the new elections process in a time established through partnership. Let me start with 3 again. Adopt the new elections process in a time established through partnership of county elections offices by fall of 2022 in order to apply by the May 2023 election in compliance with House Bill 3310 from 2019. Is
there anybody to second? Kathy, I can't. Director Gauss, I couldn't.
I'll second.
Okay. Mr. Dacopoulos, now.
I'm seconding the amendment
You're seconding the amendment to the amendment? Are you seconding the amendment that Director Hine read?
Yes.
Thank you.
So now the board is discussing the amendment to the amendment. So I just want to make sure that everyone, as you're discussing, that everyone understands what that second amendment looks like. So that's the first order of business is looking at Director Lippold's amendment. He added a phrase that talks about it's the intention of the board that this be done for the May 2021 election. I can't remember the precise words, but that is what I want to make sure I understand. This is very difficult to do remotely since we're all on our own computers. So with respect to the second amendment, Director Hine, what language did you move to strike in the amendment?
Since Director Lippold-Pion had basically his amendment was starting with now therefore and changing those words, this amendment does the same thing. So it strikes the now therefore paragraph or paragraphs. I'm not looking at the original, so I can't see it because I've already got two things on my screen.
Is there a way that the person who has control of the share screen can display the Lippold-Pion amendment and then strike or write out the new proposed amendment of the amendment?
I have a clarification question. Don't we need to vote on my amendment before we move? I mean, we can have a discussion, but is the first order voting on the second amendment, not the first amendment, correct?
That's correct, but I wanted to make sure that all board members and the public understand what this says, because that was a long second amendment.
I know, sorry.
And I want to make sure that you all know what you're voting on when you're discussing and voting on amendment number 2.
Mr. Dikopoulos, could I ask Director Hine and Director Lippold-Pion to send me as an email, and then I can download that and try to project it? I think that may be the best way to, I don't have copies of all of these amendments.
That's what I was going to ask. That's great.
I thought they went to the board today.
Assistant Superintendent Sproles, I have that and I'm emailing it to you right now.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
And I just want to confirm, I thought the email that we got was Marty's amendment. It wasn't, I thought I saw something from Satya.
It was from Satya, but he is board chair to make things just more clear, because the chair can, with a small board, make an amendment, but I just thought it'd be easier if I decided I'll just do it for him.
Okay. I hadn't seen, I just wanted to be sure we had the right.
Right. That's the correct amendment.
Can I inquire, Mr. Dikopoulos, who second did Director Pioni's?
Director Blassie seconded
Okay.
that motion.
So I appreciate this time because it gives exact language. It's a very important thing. So I really wanted to make sure. Thank you, Mr. Dikopoulos, for suggesting this.
So that we don't spend undue time, would it be appropriate for me, while this is, while Dr. Sproles is working on this, for me to give the board some legal guidance?
Yes, please.
Okay. The statute that authorizes school boards to change the method of voting is in Chapter 332. It's and it permits the school board to be elected at large or elected by zones. That statute is 332.126, and it references Chapter 255, which is the set of Oregon laws that deal with special district elections like school board elections. In that chapter is the new Oregon Voting Rights Act. That's where House Bill 3310 lives. So, for example, in the second amendment proposed by Director Hyan, there's a reference to House Bill 3310. That's in Chapter 255. There are two methods of changing the electoral system in Chapter 255. One is under 255.405, and that permits the district to go ahead and change an election system if you conclude that the current system impairs the ability of members of a protected class to have an equal opportunity to elect candidates of their choice. I mean, that's a paraphrase of 255.405. The definition is a little bit longer than that. In order to change the electoral system under subsection 405, the board may authorize a change in consultation with county elections officials. It also goes on to say that prior to authorizing a change, the board must take into account or into consideration any recommendations made by the county clerk that administers the electoral system of the district. So this statute clearly presumes that there's going to be some kind of consultation prior to authorizing a change, and that there would be some recommendation that you would take into consideration from the county clerk. And after you consider the recommendations, if any, from the county clerk, then the board would go ahead and make the change that you want to make. So that's the first method under Chapter 255. The second is under subsection 416, and it's a much more elaborate procedure, a procedure that you would use if you believed that you were trying to remedy a potential violation of the Oregon Voting Rights Act or to comply with a court order. It requires, before you make a change, it would require notice to residents, 2 public hearings over a 60-day period, potentially drafting maps of proposed boundaries, 2 public hearings to talk about the draft maps, and then you would ultimately have a vote on changing the electoral system. That wouldn't go into effect until the next election cycle after the change. So that would be May of 2023. So as the board considers changing the electoral process, you need to be thinking about under what statute are you doing that? Because if you're doing it simply under 255.405, the law says that prior to authorizing the change, you must take into consideration recommendations by the county. On the other hand, if you are wanting to change the electoral system because you're trying to remedy a potential violation of the statute, then there's a much lengthier process. And so tonight, I would like to encourage you to think about these because the Second Amendment, for example, mentions House Bill 3310, but it's not specific on the method to be used. We also know that just last Friday, Mr. Burgess from Marion County sent a letter to me giving, at which I sent to board leadership, giving some timelines for if the board wants this to go into effect for the May 2021 election, you would need to do an approval very quickly because Mr. Burgess outlined the timeline for their office to complete all that information. So I wanted you to know this and think about what statute you propose to proceed under, because if it's under 416, there's no way to complete that process before the May 2023 election cycle. If you're going under using the 405 process, my reading of the statute is you still need to get a recommendation from county officials on any recommendations they have before you can authorize the change.
Mr. Dacopoulos, thank you very much. I think Dr. Sproles just is ready with the language, and then we'll open it up for discussion. Vice Chair Bethel?
I just have a follow-up question for Mr. Dacopoulos before we go into the amendments, if that's all right.
Yes, please.
So it's my understanding that there's no violation at this time, and there's been no study of a violation. And under the Second Amendment, it's just a suggestion to go through a community-wide process outside of any assumption of a violation, to do a community-wide process to determine what the best outcome of elections is. So why does, in that case, there have to be a decision made on either one of those statutes? Is it simply because the language of House Bill 3310 is provided in the amendment?
Well, I wanted the board to understand that there's two options under 3310. One which is would make it unrealistic to comply with the May 2021 deadline. There's been no finding of violations of the Voting Rights Act, and so we're not trying at this point. We're not trying to remedy any claim that has been brought under that act. And so when we use one of these systems under House Bill 3310 in Chapter 255, I think we need to be clear on what the board believes the problem is trying to solve.
Mr. Dacopoulos, I just want a procedural clarification. When we have this discussion, do we have to cite what statute that we are using as part of our discussion, or people can discuss, the board directors can discuss the way they see, and then you can guide us whether we are following the statutes, because we don't want the statutes to limit our discussion. That's a procedural question I want to ask.
I don't want to overly complicate this for the board. I don't think you need to decide as you have the discussion about which section you intend to go under until you're closer to a decision on what you want to do, and then we'll talk about procedurally how that is going to work.
All right. Thank you very much. I want to kind of go around and open it up for discussion. Director Lepol-Peon, you are recognized. You're the first person to start the discussion.
Oh, well, before we go into discussion, I had another question for Paul, if that's okay.
Well, that is part of your discussion, or is it outside the discussion? Your time is yours now.
Fair enough. I will speak and then I'll also ask a question at the end. So, as my amendment got completely wiped off the map, so that way we cannot discuss it before choosing on another one, I can't help but feel like it was kind of a, dirty process. We didn't even discuss the other one before wiping it off the face of the earth and replacing it with this. In this, I see no hard commitment for us to make any changes. It just says we're going to talk about it. Anyways, I'll go into what I was going to say about my amendment. So we've already heard my data-driven reasoning for why I'm proposing this resolution. So instead, I'm going to answer the question of why now. I've noticed a pattern with our current school board recently where we will often pass issues that are important to us personally as soon as possible without much hassle. But then we take issues that are important to the community and we drag them on for months and months without taking any action. I say this not as an insult or to bring down anybody, but to hopefully raise an important critique that can help us better serve kids. I believe that each of us ran for school board because we care about kids. And as a part of that work, we have to acknowledge the hard truths and work to grow and be better as a board. This impacts kids because every single year we have new young children into our school system. And every single year we have seniors that graduate and leave our district who are all impacted by every decision we make as a district. When the issues are important as this, we need to act with true leadership, be data-driven, and act with urgency. If we don't take action on this for the current election cycle, it will affect our parents and our students for the next 4 years until these zones are up for election again. It may be longer depending on who's on the board at this time, and if they choose to delay this again, and if the newly proposed amendment doesn't actually result in anything. We need to do this because, as stated in a rather informative letter to the school board from a group of community leaders from Luce, Piccoon, and several other community organizations, stated that, and I quote, "The school board's lack of urgency to fix these problems significantly damages voters' faith in the political process. Every day that we wait to take action, the faith in our political process will continue to decline. Passing this now gives candidates enough time to decide if they would still like to run for office and allows those who are not running, because it is at large, the opportunity to file before the deadline. I've advocated for this change for years, wrote the policy, proposed this to the board, provided the data, sought input from the community, got advice and a recommendation from the county elections office during the NAACP public forum, stated my case backed by facts and data on multiple occasions, and have received much public comment on this, asking us to move forward on this resolution. A majority of the 50+ public comments from the last meeting were in favor of this, and a major, overwhelming majority of the public comments have been in favor of this resolution every meeting since January, including both the NAACP officially endorsing this and the support from groups such as the Salem-Keizer Coalition of Equality, Piccoon, Luce, and many others who work together to represent thousands of BIPOC folks within our community and who work hard to ensure that my fellow BIPOC community members have the opportunity to live a good life and be truly represented. The concerns about the census, campaign finance reform, et cetera, are all red herrings and don't have anything to do with this proposal. The only real argument that I can hear from our board as to why we might not want to pass this resolution is because of the desire to receive public comment, which is a real concern. I am thankful that our board is now concerned with receiving public comment and listening to the community. I wish our board had the same passion for public comment over 2 months ago when I originally brought this resolution forward. In the beginning, I tried to ask the district if it was possible for them to get public comment, which common sense would say yes. But the district wasn't allowed to answer in the name of procedure. Just like in the name of procedure, my amendment was wiped off the face of the earth. Since then, there has been no pursuit by our board leadership or the board as a whole to pursue a hearing or community forum at any time, which led the local NAACP chapter to pick up the leadership mantle and do it for us. If our board hasn't been interested in public comment in the last 2 months, more than 2 months, then what makes them so interested now? I ask myself this: is this newfound interest in public comment because we truly want to listen and learn from the community? Or is this an attempt for us to delay the process so that way we can continue our election system as is for as long as we can? If there has been no attempt in the past 2 months, then why should we believe that it will be done in the future, especially if there's no concrete promise to make changes?
Thank you very much. Dr. Hyan, you're recognized.
Thank you. Director Lippold-Pion, I just wanted to let you know that I was under the impression of talking to somebody else that the amendment I was going to make would actually follow the vote of your amendment, but I was following a direction by our board lawyer on process. And that's why I asked if it was the right time for me to make that amendment, because my understanding was we would have your amendment, a discussion, a vote, and then if it failed, I would make an amendment, or maybe even if it passed. So I want you to know that I did not do this to wipe you off the map, okay?
Thank you, Marty, for saying that.
Also, I wanted to say that I understand your frustration, you know, that you've been talking about this for a little bit. And of course, I've been talking about this for 1.5 years. And 1.5 years is how long I have wanted to get the community involved. I just went about it the wrong way, apparently. And then as we had student investment account, and then we had COVID. And I had hoped to pick up the mantle again had I been reelected as board chair in August or September, because I think it's important. But I think it's important to look at the whole thing. I don't want to change this now and then go and change it again. We changed it after the census last time. Our boundaries, like I said, are so different. I represent kids on my street go to North, but I represent McKay. So there's several things I think that really ought to change. And that's why I'm having a challenge with just doing this now. But I certainly understand your frustration, because this is something I've been wanting to do, like I said, for 1.5 years. Okay.
Could we please show that, board chair, could we please show the amendments at issue so that the board members know what they're discussing and voting on?
Thank you very much. Dr. Sproles, I thank you very much for showing us the exact language.
So this is Director Lippold's First Amendment, and after the word recognizes the importance of this action and agrees to, between the words action and to is where the Second Amendment is proposed. So the Second Amendment would take out all of the language after the words agrees to. So the words work with legal counsel all the way to the end of this phrase are proposed to be deleted by Amendment number 2.
Dr. Sproles, could you show us the second?
So you'll see that in Amendment proposed 2, after the words in the first phrase agrees to, you know, that first phrase is the same as Director Lippold-Pion's amendment. So all of the language after the word to that starts with number 1 in parentheses to the end is the Second Amendment that the board is now discussing. Does everyone see that? I'll let you read it, but that's the only phrase that the Second Amendment proposes to keep from the therefore clause is the first phrase up to the word to, and before the number 1.
Okay. Thank you. Dr. Goss, you were going to say something. I saw you raise your hand, if I'm not mistaken.
Are you speaking to me?
Yes, Dr. Goss, you raised your hand, I thought.
I did. I did
Please.
some time ago.
All right.
And to our attorney, what sort of input can we be expected to receive from the Marion County Clerk?
Well, the board has received one letter that Mr. Burgess addressed to me on Friday afternoon that gave a timeline for their own inter-office operations on how they would need to have this. They'd need to have your decision as soon as possible this week, because later this week, the elections division has to take certain actions. And I'll just read an email that he resent this afternoon, where he says, forwarding my correspondence with Paul Dacopoulos Ray, our ability to run the SD election by zone rather than at large, should you so choose, and should you notify us by noon Friday, March 19. My understanding is that you have long had the authority to determine if you wish to run director elections by zone or at large. Please inform my office as soon as possible of your decision for this upcoming May 18 district election. We have a very short timeline to define, design, print, proof, and test ballots before we get them off to the printer by March 25 in order to print our military and overseas ballots to be inserted and mailed by April 2.
I thank you for that.
So I don't know what additional recommendations or assistance the board would receive from either Polk County or Marion County.
Have we inquired from Polk County? Have we gotten any answer from Polk County?
Polk County doesn't have the same issues as Marion County, because there is just one Salem-Keizer school zone in Polk County. So they're going to, that's an easier situation than Marion County has, but I don't know.
That doesn't preclude us from including them in what we're doing.
You would still need to ask them, according to the statute, you'd still need to ask both election officials in both counties if they have any recommendations. And you're supposed to do that before you change.
Mr. Dacopoulos, you are going to say something. You said you're supposed to do that before?
The statute says that prior to making the change, you're supposed to ask for and consider any recommendations from county elections officials.
Okay. I think Director Hine raised her hand, and then Director Blasi. I can't see all the windows. If you can go back to all the windows, that way I don't miss anybody. It's a very important decision we are discussing.
So if I understand what Mr. Dacopoulos is saying, Marion County Elections says they can do it, but I heard you use the word recommendations, and that we're supposed to ask for the recommendations of both Marion and Polk County before we vote to change it. Is that correct?
Well, let me read verbatim the law. It's and this is in 255.405 subsection B. The board of a qualifying district, like the school district, in consultation with the county clerk that administers the electoral system of the qualifying district, may authorize a change to the electoral system used by the qualifying district in order to comply with this law. And I won't use the numbers. And this is the important part. Prior to authorizing a change under this paragraph, the board must take into account any recommendations made by the county clerk that administers the electoral system of the qualifying district.
I can't hear you.
We haven't received a recommendation by either qualifying district, as far as I know. Maybe we have, and I just don't know.
Mr. Dekopoulos, could you answer that the letter that was sent by Mr. Bill Burgess, is that the same as a recommendation? Is it just a procedural information he sent us? It's not clear to me. And is there a similar letter from Polk County election officer or equivalent officer?
I was not involved in procuring this letter. I believe that Director Lippold-Pion has had probably the most conversation on this subject, because it is he who asked Mr. Burgess to provide a letter to me, which I provided to the board leadership. So I don't know if this is a recommendation or not. It surely recommends that if you're going to change the way that voting happens in the district, that you do it by a certain time frame in order to have this operative for this next election. So in that sense, he's recommending that you move very quickly. I don't know if this is Mr. Burgess's recommendation pursuant to the statute. It's just not clear to me. And I have not received a similar communication from Polk County.
Thank you. Now, Dr. Blasi, you raised your hand next.
Thank you. Yeah. So a few things. Because we have competing amendments, I want to take us back to the original resolution and why I think every board member says that they support this, but I'm getting very confused by these recent actions that I feel were a little not transparent. I'll just put it that way. This resolution was written by Director Lippold-Pion for some reasons that I think we all agreed with around equity and opportunity for members of our traditionally underserved zones and our traditionally underserved communities to have equal or equitable access to running to be a board member. We're still a school district that over 50% of our students are not white. They are students of color. So I think we all agree, we've all said we agree, that we want to create an opportunity for our community to represent their zone and their students and their families. And I know we're a board and we're getting muddled in the amendments, but I have to ask myself, why are we fighting through amendments when we do have an opportunity to pass a resolution to make it actually happen? And I know that our attorney is trying to help us read through the statute, but it's my understanding from what I've heard from both Marion and Polk County clerks, we do have the ability to do this. The feedback was, if we're going to do it for this election, we need to do it, which is why Jesse asked to get this back on the agenda. And I want to point out that when this was originally sent to our board leadership, it included information about a date certain. And I think that was over a month ago. And that's not what was put on the board agenda. And so, Jesse had to go back and he's having to amend his own resolution because that information was removed without his permission. And so he is having to amend his resolution. And now there's a counter amendment to kick this further down the road and to prevent us from taking action now during an election cycle. And the other thing, you know, since I've been on the board, I have been told time and time again, a current board cannot commit to actions for a future board. And the amendment, the second amendment, I think does that. It's saying that a board in 2023 or 2022 or who knows when is going to take certain actions. And quite frankly, this is the first time I've seen all of these. And I don't know how on earth this board can commit a future board to requiring election experts, best practices. I mean, who's going to define those? And that that the board is going to prevent political gerrymandering. I mean, there's all kinds of language in there that I don't understand how we as a current board can commit a future board to upholding. I don't think that we're actually allowed to do that. But I think that that's the lesser of the concern I have right now. We have an opportunity to do the thing that we all say we want to do, but yet there seems to be a push or an avoidance of doing what we say when we say we want to do the right thing. And I'm not understanding why there's such a fight to do what we say that we want to do.
Dr. Blasey, thank you very much. I think Director Gauss, and then I'll go to Director Hine. And then I'm going to spend some time ask Advisor Mebinton and Vice Chair Bethel, who have been awfully quiet, and Director Kylo is not commenting.
Okay, one thing I want to make clear, and probably to Director Blasey, I've been very outspoken since the very beginning. I do not want zone voting, and I don't want it because our organization was never established to have that. When people run for an office, there's no question that they feel accountable to the people that voted for them. And it continues to divide our organization more and more. I brought this up to Director Lippold a long time ago. And he said, oh, we just won't do that. And that was not quite good enough for me. I've watched it happen. I've watched it happen in a variety of places. But I think when we were established, it was definitely to have directors who were accountable for what was happening to children in the entire city, not just a particular zone or one of 7. And if we change to going that way, in my opinion, we will rue the day we ever did that. We have enough trouble operating together right now as a single board. You want 7 boards trying to decide it on each decision. So I think we are making it less operable by doing that. And I cannot vote in that direction.
Director Hine, your hand is up. But...
Yes, thank you. And I will lower it, and then I will ask my, I have a question and a statement. Sorry, I'll figure out my hand after I'm done. Okay, so I'm not against voting by zone per se. I'm really kind of neutral on it because we haven't really studied it. When I was board chair and trying to work on elections, I took to heart advice given to me by a board member, whose name I won't mention, as not to embarrass anybody, who told me in 2019 that I needed to have a process and I needed to talk to lots of different groups of people, including experts in data, experts in elections, experts in, I don't have my notes that I took when I talked to this particular director, but and different community partners, all community partners. So I took that to heart, and I don't understand. So, I took it to heart, and I think it's important. Also, Director Blasey said the ORS said equal and equitable access to run for school board. I think is what she said. I thought it said something different as far as equal and equitable access to vote for who they would want to vote for. I do not vote by gender for genders or races. I vote for the most qualified individual. And so, Mr. Dikopoulos, do I have it wrong? Is it that it is equal and equitable access to run for school board, or is it equal and equitable access to vote for school board members?
The statute in section 405 says that the election may not be conducted in a manner that impairs the ability of members of a protected class to have an equal opportunity to elect candidates of their choice, or an equal opportunity to influence the outcome of an election as a result of the dilution or abridgment of their rights of electors who are members of the protected class. It's focused on electors.
Is there any other question, Vice Chair Bethel or Dr. Kylo? Do you have any questions? Vice Chair Bethel, do you have any statement you want to make? It's very important. We want to hear from everybody. Please unmute. Vice Chair Bethel, you still there? Okay. Dr. Leopold-Pion, your hand is up. And
yeah, I mean, I just wanted to, because we've talked about, up and down, the reasons for, the reasons against. And I think Director Blasey said it well. I think we got to go back to the foundation of why, why this was brought up. It was brought up because it's possible in our current election system for someone to, campaign in West Salem and Keizer when they lived in East Salem and have those people vote for you while your own community votes for somebody else, and this would, if we're talking about accountability and make sure we're digging it, this lets you dig a deep well in your community as opposed to a shallow pool across the whole, the whole city. And I think that's rather apparent. We've gone over this a million times, so you guys already know this. But my question is this, because me, I'm rather known for being someone who can meet in the middle and talk about things, right? My question therefore is this: is there room? Because it seems to me as if my proposed amendment isn't gonna fly here. That's just kind of getting a feeling in the room. I don't want to judge anybody beforehand. Is there any wiggle room from other board members for a commitment for the following election cycle? A real, true commitment, not a vague, and we'll talk about it, maybe possibly that's going to end up being a no. Is there any support for a real, true, if we took my amendment and just changed the date for the fall next election cycle, is there that sort of commitment? Can we have that conversation? Or are these the lines that are drawn in the sand and we're not willing to move? I'm just curious to what your guys' thoughts are.
Well, we'll leave that to the discussion phase, and let's start with Advisor Mabinton. I want to hear from you, please.
Can you guys hear me well?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to say I really wanted a yes for Director Leopold-Pion's amendment. I think, like Director Blasey said, and if you guys already had agreed that there was some equity issues and having people on board that look like us, students, I think that should have already been the done deal right there. you guys have a chance to do this, and I think this is what's right. I've heard people on the board say something about dividing organizations. I think when this organization gets divided is when we're having an argument against amendments that were already agreed upon and put off, of having people in the community to represent students that look like them. Like you guys said, over 50% of the students in Salem-Keizer School District are not white. So I think it is important to have representation on the board of people who look like us.
Oh, I lost your voice. Advisor Mabinton, I can't hear you. Can't hear you.
I really don't understand everything with the legal issue part. So that part I'm really not understanding, but I don't think it's bigger than making a change for what is right in this community. I think that is the most important thing. And I think if you guys think about students and stop thinking, I've heard multiple adults today just at this meeting say, well, I feel like I was bullied, or I feel like, and it's really about what do students feel like. I go back to this every time. Students are the most important people when you guys are making the decision, because all of you guys, when you guys joined the board, agreed that you guys want what's best for students. It wasn't what's best for me, myself, and I. And I think you shouldn't be making future decisions for 2023 of a board that, you know, that they can't even agree. They're not even here today. We don't even know if there's going to be the same people. So I think these are the important things that I'm trying to get through everyone's head here. I'm not going to say I think anyone's right or wrong, but I think if we think on behalf of students that this should be passed. And I think it was a bad example, whether it was meant to or not, to knock the First Amendment out like it was. It didn't seem right. And I think it was a bad example to students that are probably watching today.
Thank you, Advisor Mabinton. Director Goss, and then I'll go to Vice Chair Bethel. I can't yet unmute.
So, can you hear me all right?
Yes, please.
Okay, I don't think that what we're asking for to change from zone voting to at-large voting has really been presented throughout the district. And I'm sorry, but I don't feel that it has. Director Pion, as you mentioned, the people you'd talked to, it was, clarify me, it was Pecune and it was Luce. You mentioned Pecune. I mean, there's lots of people that are unaware of what's going on until the Statesman Journal picked it up. And as a result, I've got a landslide on my phone of people calling, wanting to know what's going on, which tells me that we haven't adequately spread it around. And quite frankly, what I've gotten messages from are zones all over town. And I think if we're going to talk about people having equal access, they need equal knowledge. And I don't think that's been clearly put out. And I'll have to say, I spent the time to go to the NCAA meeting that we had. Only one side was ever presented. And to me, this isn't pushing out opportunity throughout the city of Salem.
Vice Chair Bethel, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I want to make a couple of remarks. Well, I just want to tell Director Blassie that I disagree that the original resolution that Director Lippold-Pion put forward was changed by board leadership, because that's not factual. The information was provided to our staff in a board plate, and that was presented. And lots and lots and lots of conversations have occurred between board leadership and our attorney, who's been involved in all these things going back and forth, and also our attorney and Director Lippold-Pion, who's been coached immensely by Mr. Dikopoulos on this topic.
So I didn't take out any date certain from anything that was originally put forth. Secondly, the priority of this board and the district for the better part of the last 8 months has been COVID and kids and education. And it's still my intent to focus on getting kids in classrooms. And although this election is present and it's not anything that we can tend to, it is the reality. But kids getting into classrooms is my priority. And it will remain my priority until kids get back into schools. And also earlier, Director Lippold-Pion stated, I believe in January, that although this board has integrity and would uphold integrity in zone votes going forward, I don't know that that is certain. I've looked at the way the Salem City Council operates in its ward circumstances, which is exactly how zone voting would occur, in my opinion, in the future, pitting one ward or one zone against each other. This district has had a long time concept of equity under a system approach. It is my opinion that a system approach is not equitable. That's not a secret. I believe that there's been opportunity for one school in this district to receive much other greater things than another school in this district based on the attention it gets and how people go and rake back resources. I am concerned greatly that if we move to a zone vote concept without full community understanding, which cannot happen in the next 4 days, this concept could occur. I am greatly concerned as to what could happen on a board when we're standing forward for our particular community and then board members decide to go at it to protect their community. That is a very real possibility. So for me, I don't know whether zone voting is appropriate or not. I don't agree with all of the facts that Director Lippold-Pion put forward in the February meeting, because I did my own analysis on what it looked like for costs for elections in all the zones that occurred in 2019, including my own election. And I was able to prove some of his information wrong just on my basic search through OLIS. I think that we're just really rushing this. I absolutely believe that we should have greater representation and greater conversation and greater partnership across the board. If we're actually talking about really doing the work, then we should really do the work. So I can't support a change right now this fast because I don't believe we've done the work. I think Director Lippold-Pion has done a lot of work, but I think we're, as Director Blassie has said for the better part of the entire time I've been on this board, we need to be doing the work together, and that hasn't yet occurred. And I'm sorry, but I disagree that it's because we don't want something to happen. I think that we still as a board struggle, and that does impact our community, and that's a tragedy. But at some point we have to come together, and maybe this is it. But I think we have to do more work. So that's where I'm at.
Director Lippold-Pion, your hands are raised.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Oh, yeah, let me lower my hand real quick. First, I just wanted to clarify, off of what Director Goss was saying. I mean, yes, I have spoken with them now that, we're, 3 months in I've spoken with tons of organizations now that we're 3 months in on this proposal. In the initial proposal, I hadn't really spoken to really much of anybody in regards to social organizations. I just knew what I believed to be right, and I worked with the Oregon School Boards Association to have them help guide me on what that structure could look like. So, like, we had a draft, and then they looked at it, yada yada. So it wasn't this, just so you know, this wasn't drafted or given by other organizations who had what they thought would be best. This was just one that I brought forward. And of course, we have amendments, so it's not 100% perfect, and I don't think anyone would be. Secondly, on to Director Bethel was saying, I'm not sure what facts you're stating were false because you didn't cite any actual things that I said. The only thing I said in regards to campaign finance, which I believe is what you were saying, I said upwards of $50,000. And yeah, you're right, I was wrong. It was actually Chuck Lee raised $63,000. Well, some candidates raised less. It was $63,000. I went and looked during the, you can go look that up online. It's super easy to find, public information. So yeah, you're right, I was wrong. It was $13,000 more. And then I would also say, in regards to this in general, we have two basic proposals on the table, and that's just what we're going to have to vote on as a board. One of them, right? If we vote yes on Director Hyan's amendment, which I believe was originally drafted by Chair Chandigriri, then what we're doing is essentially saying that, hey, we're not going to do anything right now, and we're going to wait a year and then have conversations about maybe possibly changing something, which to me sounds a whole lot like when, you know, the House and the Senate pass a bill with a million things in it, and one of them happens to be something that we want, right? There's many things besides just by zone that we're going to talk about, but no actual commitment. My amendment is simply putting a date in the original draft, which says we're going to try our best for this current election cycle. And it might turn out that we can't get it done for this election cycle. We might get a recommendation from the counties that says, hey, you guys need to wait and do this slower. And according to House Bill, whatever it is, you know, you guys need to do this. And that's fine, because it says we're going to work with them and that we're going to try our best. But if we can't, then we will make it effective for the next election cycle, right? So this isn't saying we have to do this right now or nothing. This is saying we're going to try our best. And if the county elections say, hey, you guys can't do this because of this bill, like, which seems to be the concern of some of our board members, then we will work with the county on that. So I just want to make it very clear the two that we're looking at. And then to address the public comment thing, which Director Bethel said that we need to do the work on. We've had months to do the work. Just because it's not the work you wanted to do doesn't mean that it's not the work that needed to get done. We have a huge responsibility. I know it's hard and I know it sucks. And there's a million other things we could be doing right now, right? But we're choosing to be here because we're choosing to address systems so that way they can fit the needs of kids. And if that means us putting in extra hours to do a little bit extra work to make sure our elections are fair, then that's the work that needs to get done. And I agree with you. I don't think it should have been just me doing a lot of the work. I think that our board leadership shouldn't have blocked my question to the district about whether or not we could receive public comment. I think within the last 60 plus days of us having this on our minds, we should have at least tried or asked the question of what receiving public input would look like, but our board didn't even try. So I just wanted to get that out there.
Advisor Mebinton, you have a question before I want to say a few things, if I may.
No disrespect to anyone here, but when we hear as students a lot of the time, like Jesse said, this could take a whole nother year. This is a whole issue between equity and diversity right now. And I just feel like when we say we're going to work on something, it's a lot like, oh, you're patting on the shoulder. We're going to work on this. We're going to talk about it. And let's hope something gets done. I think right now, Jesse is offering action in the moment. And like he said, that could go either way. But I think that's really important to look at right now. I feel like if we're going to say we're going to talk about it and work on it, I feel like people should be speaking on what actions are going to be taken into place to make this better in the future.
All right, thank you very much. I have a few things. I just made sure I write it down and calm so that I didn't want to miss anything. It's a very complex and very important resolution. I really want to thank Dr. Lepol-Pion to bring it up in January. This is just like, it's very, very critical. And it really is a complex, but very important. And what decision we make will influence for decades. Some schools or districts have not redrawn their boundaries for over 30 years. And that's talking about like kids are still in school. I support making changes that ensure there is opportunity for diverse school board members, candidates to run and have a chance to win the election. I just want to get that out in the public. For me, having diversity and global perspectives in school board directors is critical. That's how I see as a first generation immigrant to addressing complex challenges we face. It will allow us to overcome our implicit bias in policy making. That is the reason I believe we need diversity. Let's say all 7 board directors and superintendent think alike. We can potentially overlook serious gaps in our system and cause harm to our students. To me, that is the real reason why we need diversity. So we really think outside the box and constantly keep looking at our own systems. It needs a thoughtful, transparent, and inclusive process. And I went back and read that House Bill 3310. It's a 24-page document. It really, it was specifically designed to address some of these inequity issues. That's why really it's important to read that 24-page. It does have some flaws, I want to say right out the outset. For example, it clearly forbids us talking about campaign financing. It has to be under the Secretary of State. It really talks about plurality form of election. I don't like it. I wish we had other alternative model which would really make opportunity for diverse candidates to get elected, but it really talks about plurality form. Pursuing an equity lens does not mean we do not adhere to the law or not allow anyone or any special interest group to subvert or interfere with the democratic process of policy making or the law. So we can still pursue equity and still follow the letter of the law. We just heard that we have not got any recommendation from Polk County election. We just heard, even in the first option, whatever the number was, what is that, 405 processor, it really requires an input before we make an action. So equity does not mean we can overlook aspects of it and then get all kinds of challenges down the road in a legal system. I don't want that to happen to our board. We must ensure our community, including BIPOC community, has all the information regarding the law. I would like to have learned about it, what this change entails, why are we doing this, why it should be consistent with 2019 House Bill 3310, which became the law. It is the first time Mr. Dacopoulos explained this in the community forum. The House Bill 3310 essentially addresses all that this policy is trying to address in terms of having diversity, protected class members from having a chance to run and win. I also reviewed the National Women's Voting League of Women's Voters guidelines, which I shared with all the 7 board directors. When we omit reference to the law or do not share all perspectives in public discussion or debate, or only use selective information, it is harmful for our democratic process. We will only perpetuate misinformation and bias people have or candidates bring with them. That's what Director Goss was referring to when we didn't discuss different perspectives. This resolution omits any reference to 2019 House Bill 3310 and its provisions. And hence this policy would not have aligned, in my opinion at least, with all the pieces, that components of that law, what we are trying to enact, and hoping that our policy is consistent with that. I so appreciate being invited to sit and listen to the NAACP Community Forum. Some of you attended as well. We heard many important questions. Will this allow progressive candidates a better chance to win the election? How about ranked choice voting? What about campaign finance changes? Is this part of systemic racism? Director Lepol-Pion, our chief sponsor of this resolution, and a previous candidate, a prominent local community leader, spoke and described what struggle they had to go through financially, raising all kinds of difficulty, reaching out to large. I appreciate listening to that. I also had, after receiving the letter from Honorable Representative Evans, personally picked up the phone and called him. And we have had multiple conversations, correspondences, and talked to him. I said, we haven't had our census report. I don't know who is living where. The last time the zone was drawn was in 2011. Population has changed. For example, there are 3 different zones in South Salem alone. Director Goss's zone, my zone, and Director Blassi's zone. I don't think any student from South Salem attends West Salem High School, but that's the way it is. I don't know how it was drawn. Don't get me wrong. I'm not knowledgeable in terms of how these zones were drawn. And today, we are a minority majority school district. So they're spread everywhere. We have 90 different communities. So I discussed with him, I said, please allow us to think through a process. Because we also discussed about his bill he has introduced, House Bill 3323, which would force zone-based elections, and his prior consideration of having political appointees in school board. We had a good discussion saying, first let us implement what is already in the existing law in the books, before start introducing more and more laws to the thing when we haven't even introduced the first one. I truly believe school boards should be locally elected, non-partisan, and should never be politicized. Our children are not for political pawns. I have explained my concerns about the resolution as it is written to our representative, and he did send a good letter saying he understands and he will support a process we go through. He wanted a date certain, correct? And I said, that's the way we would like it to be. It's important to remember that a resolution needs to be voted following established democratic legal process in a public meeting. Only then it is adopted as a policy before we can implement it. We shouldn't rush through, hurry up, or change the process or ask to respond before a due process is completed. It should not be construed as an attempt to interfere or subvert the public meeting process. Yet, we want to balance it with equity. When I got a call saying, can we move the previous voting of this particular action item, not the March 9th meeting, the meeting before that, I immediately referred to Director Leopold-Pion, and he also called me saying, can we move it? So we did make an agenda modification and moved it to March 9th. In all fairness, I want our community to understand this could have been decided in February. It was moved on the request of Director Leopold-Pion to March 9th. Why? Because we wanted, NAACP wanted to have a community forum, and we felt so honored to sit there and listen. To me, that is the equity part of it. Yet we need to follow a process, and it has to be a transparent process. Why it is important, in my opinion, that we should not allow any attempts to interfere or subvert the process is because we do not want our community to lose confidence in our system of policy making or deliberation that is not free from coercion. There's a question Director Leopold-Pion asked me, why couldn't we do it on Thursday at 11 o'clock? I was sitting in Fairbank. I said, many people work during that time. We don't want such an important thing to be rushed. And that's why we moved it to this one, which I announced on that meeting on March 11th. Director Leopold-Pion is the chief sponsor of this resolution. You are an incumbent, and you want to change this place because you understand this resolution and change the process and put that in place because you understand the challenges. I appreciate that. However, we need to balance it, but it should not lead to a perception that Dr. Leopold-Pion has undue advantage because he understands the system better than other candidates. It shouldn't appear that way, in my opinion. I'm not saying that. If you're an incumbent, you understand a lot more than a fresh candidate who is trying to run. So we really want to make sure that, it should not give such an appearance that because one has an advantage of understanding the processes, that they have an unfair chance in the public's eye. As a board, it's critical we uphold the sanctity of the process. And I really would like, in my opinion, to support this amendment. And I ask my fellow board directors to please support this amendment where we can truly have a community process. Many community members are also BIPOC members. People are immigrants. We have 90 different communities. I personally felt it's a blessing that as an immigrant, I got an opportunity to run with I had no idea, no prior experience, but the community took a chance with me. And I truly believe that I have done my best to contribute in my own way and ask some of very difficult questions, not because of any other reason, because I think differently, I look at issues differently, approach it differently. It was really an opportunity. That is what I mean by equity, at least my understanding of equity is. And as a practicing psychiatrist, you don't know too many people. You don't even know your neighbor. Nobody wants to associate with you. So we really have, as an immigrant, it's a steep learning curve. We have a lot of ways to go. So let's have a thorough community process. Yes, it will have a date certain. That's what we mentioned by fall of 2022. Why? Because that will allow a process of reaching 90 different communities, or at least vast majority of them. Why should a community like South Asian community be deprived of an opportunity to understand the 24-page law and see why it's not consistent? There is another reason this law is important. You can take preemptive steps to remedy a potential violation. I took this opinion from Mr. Dacopoulos. You don't need an actual violation to trigger this process. We can take preemptive steps. And that is why it is important. If we don't, then there could be multiple liability lawsuits saying you have violated this. I can see that. Let's say if we rush in and approve the amendment that was First Amendment, somebody would say that we didn't take an opinion from Polk County prior to this action. That would have been a violation, for example. Or somebody would say different community members were not included in a thorough community process. I really think that we should do every step we can to have a thorough process where community really understands. Because why should a South Asian community or a Pacific Islander community or Chakusi community be deprived of understanding this law? And that is the reason I believe I will support this amendment on the table, because this will allow us a process, and what changes we make will last for generations to come, including drawing fair zones which will be representative. So Director Lepol-Peon, and then we'll go to Director Glassie.
Hey, I would first just like to thank you for speaking on the resolution. I did just want to clear a couple things up. One of them is, sorry, that was a lot. It was a lot to process. One of them is to, just say that I did not recommend that I didn't ask you if we could have the meeting in the middle of the day on Thursday. I asked if we could have it on Thursday night or Friday night, because that would give us a little bit more time to get this done in time for, by the election, by the time our county clerk wanted it. And the second thing I wanted to clarify was that the recommendation brought up doesn't have, this current resolution as it is, that's on the table, doesn't have a specific date. And so there's no hard commitment by us to do anything except for have a process to talk about it in 2 years. Then the third thing is on the recommendation from Polk County, it actually would not be a violation. I wanted to clarify that from my conversations with Paul. Now, Paul, Mr. Dacopoulos could stop me at any time, describe the process himself. But from my conversation with him, my understanding is if we voted yes on my amendment and or the original one, then after today, so tomorrow, we would request a recommendation from Marion and Polk counties. And then they would, as soon as they get their recommendation back to us, we can then have our formal vote on this, but as long as it's before the 18th or whenever it was, the county said that we could have it. So theoretically, if we voted yes on this today, we could ask for a recommendation tomorrow, which the counties are both aware that we would ask such a thing, because I may or may not have told them this, we're going to have the vote on it today. So we could get a recommendation tomorrow, and then we could hold a special session on Wednesday, Thursday, or I think Friday, correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, to do the official vote on this. So I just want to say the recommendation is not a barrier for us to vote yes on the original or my proposed amendment to this resolution. I just wanted to clear that up.
Thank you. Director Hine. Director Blassie, did you raise your hand before? Go ahead, Director Blassie, your hand is low.
Sorry, Marty, if you want to go ahead, because I think you were going to comment on the date in your.
Yes, thank you, Director Blassie. Even though it's not exactly a date certain, my understanding of the resolution that I read says we're going to have this done by fall 2022, so that potential candidates then have an opportunity. They understand exactly the new rules as they're laid out, and they have an opportunity to prepare. Some people, when they're running for office for school board, they don't file on the last day. They start planning months before filing even starts to run. So this would give potential candidates plenty of time to understand what's going on and make appropriate plans for the 2023 election.
Thank you. Director Blassie, go ahead. Yeah,
I still have the same question out there. I'll pose it as a question. Can this board pass a resolution that's amended that includes the date of 2022 to require a future board to take action? I don't believe that we can do that on a future board's behalf, because what's, you know, we're saying we want to do this because it's the right thing to do. And we want to have, you know, take public comment, and we want to do a process. But if I'm understanding the amendment says that a board in 2022 that could look very different than this one will actually implement this. They'll take public comment and then they'll make it happen. And I don't think that we can commit to for a future board.
Thank you, Director Blasi. That's a good point.
To the attorney.
Yeah, let me get the input from Director Kylo, and then we'll refer it to it.
My only comment to that is we will approve a budget that the next board will have to live with. So yes, it can be done, and it is done, and it will be done. Unless
That's a budget for a school district. That's a budget for a school district. This is an action for a board to take.
But that board has to live with our budget, the one that we will approve.
But that's how the budget process works. We vote.
We voted to, well, the board voted to keep the superintendent's contract in place. Can't break a contract. Yeah. So this would be, I think it could be, Paul will correct me, I'm sure, but I think this would be seen as a contract as well. And they would have to go through a full public process to change it, just as we've gone through a public process to create it.
So I want to also,
wait, I have a request. I'd like to see the amendment again. It's only been an hour and a half since we saw it, so I'd like to see it one more time, please.
Dr. Sproles, could you be kind enough to share that amendment?
Chair Chandragiri, would you like me to address?
Yeah, go ahead, please explain.
This is a very complicated subject of when can school boards request that or enter into contracts that will affect future school boards. Now, we do this all the time with school bonds. We pass a school bond and it's for a number of years. When we developed CTEC, that was a 5-year contract, but we did talk about what would be the escape hatch for a future board if a future board were to put the brakes on the development of CTEC. But nonetheless, the board did do a 5-year, or maybe it was a 6-year contract. So as I read the second proposed amendment, it says that there's going to be a public process and that a future board is going to consider all of that process, and a future board that would be in place in the fall of 22 would be making a decision. I don't see this binds that future board, because as I read this, there's going to be town halls inviting election experts, and there's going to be a move to a system of school board election by zones if it's determined by public process. So it gets close, as Director Blasi suggests, to telling a future school board what they need to do. But I don't think there's an easy way to resolve this. The future board will have to determine what the outcome of the public process is. And that's probably the best way for the future board to be able to decide independently of this board what that process concludes.
Mr. Diakopoulos, I want a clarification. 332.126, election from zones. Zones the district school board may rescind the decision and provide that the directors are nominated by zone shall be elected at large. That is 2A. It means every board has an ability to rescind the previous board by having another action item. So if this is so egregious, let's say for the sake of discussion, this is so egregious, this is completely out of line, and any board can have a new action item and say this doesn't stand the scrutiny of our democratic process. We rescind it. That's all it takes, if I understand right. Am I right in considering that?
It's basically correct, although when you cite chapter 332, it references the process that we've been talking about all night in 255. So yes, you can change back. A future board could change back or change over to a zone process or voting by zone. It's up to each school board.
So the follow-up question, would that statute not be our escape route, Mr. Dakopoulos? If this is so egregious, it is totally undesirable from an equity point of view. It has hurt the community because we passed this. So future board can take advantage of that statute and say, this doesn't make sense. We kind of rescind the whole thing.
The statute makes it clear that the school board is ultimately responsible for how to vote for school board members.
That statute has not been changed, if I'm right.
For a long, long time.
So that statute will, as of today, could that be an option as an escape route if there are concerns about future board not agreeing with this?
Well, I'm not sure I really understand the question, because what you're debating right now is the Second Amendment, which says that if the community process concludes that the system of election by zones is the right process, this says that that's what the next school board is going to do. Your question of if the next school board finds something egregious, can they change it? The answer is yes, they can. The next board can change whatever they want to change, but this proposal suggests that next board is going to be guided by what the community process comes up with, and that's Director Blassi's issue.
So there are so many policies that has been passed by the previous board, which we all had to live with. It's not a news to us. We have so many policies, executive limitation, etc. And it's not that in 2022, there's still 3 of us going to be there. The community can hold us accountable for passing, and then we'll have 4 new members, because we are still living with the zone that was drawn in 2011, aren't we? So like that, there are so many policies are in place. I don't know if every board has to decide on how the zones are drawn and every time they get elected. And again, when we have 3 members get elected, do we kind of completely disrupt everything and restart everything? Or it's not entirely clear to me. If you can explain that, aren't we bound by something that we do go? Aren't we responsible for community? The community process decides this is what we want.
I think all we can say about the second proposed amendment is that it promises to do something in the future that the majority of this board may not be involved with. If Director Lippold-Pion wins the election and he remains a board member, then there's still a majority of the current board who would be in place in the fall of 2022. So the argument is it's essentially the same majority. But if he loses the election and there's 4 new members, then it's really a new board. We're not going to be able to resolve this question tonight. My advice is that each board can strongly suggest that future boards follow through on what it on what your current board wants to do. And it is the prerogative of the future board to say, we don't like that idea so much. We're not going to do it the way you thought we were going to do it. That is possible. That's all we can say tonight.
Thank you very much for clarifying.
And again, we're still in discussion and debate about amendment number 2.
Correct. That's correct. So let's go to Director Blasey, and then I'll go to Vice Chair Bethel. And
thank you. I would call for the vote of Amendment 2. I think that was Danielle's idea as well. If we call for the vote, because that's the last one on the docket, and it's my understanding if that passes, then it's done. If that doesn't pass, then we go back to the First Amendment and so forth. But I would just call for the vote on Amendment number 2. Please.
Personally, I agree with you, Director Blasey. Let's see if we're ready. I think we're ready. Hearing no objection to that, Director Blasey's good idea. The second part of the complex, that amendment, which was proposed by Director Hine and seconded by Director Goss. Yes, Director Hine, you raised the
Robert's rules question. I agree with Director Blasey. In fact, I was thinking if somebody didn't say something soon, I was going to go for that. But I think we have to vote on that. If I'm correct,
you're going to vote
Mr. Dikopoulos, please let us know.
It takes a second to close.
I second it then.
So the discussion is closed?
No, we have to vote on it.
You have to vote on it.
Yeah, we're going to vote on that. And the amendment proposed by Director Hine to the original resolution is the amendment on the table, seconded by Director Goss.
No, what we're voting on is to close debate.
Okay, so to close the debate proposed by Director Blasey, seconded by Director Hine. That's going to go around, show of hands, if you agree with that. Raise your hands like a hand. Okay, so it looks like it passes to close the debate, discussion on the amendment which was on the table.
Now you're voting on amendment number 2.
Now we're going to vote on amendment number 2 as proposed by Director Hine, seconded by Director Goss to the original resolution, right? So let's kind of go around. Director Kylo, how do you vote?
No.
So Director Kylo, no. Director Leopold?
No.
Okay. Director Blasey?
No.
Okay. Director Hine?
Yes.
Yes. Vice Chair Bethel?
Yes.
Director Goss?
Yes.
And Satya Chandrakiri, I vote yes. So we have Director Goss votes yes. Director Kylo votes no. Director Leopold votes no. Director Blasey votes no. Director Hine votes yes. Vice Chair Bethel votes yes. Chair Satya Chandrakiri votes yes to the amendment as proposed by Director Hine, seconded by Director Goss. Mr. Dikopoulos, now you have to lead. Help me, I'm kind of lost.
Well, now this is so the second amendment of Amendment 1 has passed. So now you're on the First Amendment.
So, okay, so should I say that second amendment to the amendment?
The Second Amendment has passed. So it is now the First Amendment.
Okay.
Now it's the only amendment now on the table. So you would have a discussion about this amendment, which is the same discussion you've had about this amendment number 2, and take a vote.
Yeah, I'm getting confused. So now we are going to Director Leopold's amendment? No. We'll go to the original resolution. Is that what you're saying?
Right. Director Leopold's amendment has been amended.
Correct.
So amendment number 1 is now the language of amendment number 2.
Okay. So now what are we going to be? What
You're going to vote on amendment number 1.
Why?
Can I clarify? Because
We're done.
Chair Chandragiri, can I clarify? Because I understand it's getting confusing. Is that okay?
Yes, please.
So we are now going to vote on the resolution that has the last paragraph changed to to the amendment that passed.
Thank you.
So now we have a new resolution with the verbiage for the now therefore changed, and that's what we're voting on.
Okay, so I'm going to repeat. So now we're going to be voting on the resolution with the recently passed amendment added to it. Is that correct? Now, it was, now do we have to be seconded by somebody, Mr. Kopoulos?
No, you've already got the amendment. That is the amendment.
That's the amendment. So now we're going to take a vote. Are we going to be voting?
Unless there's discussion.
That's what we've been doing, is discussing.
Let's kind of make sure we go through the process. If anybody else wants to discuss any more on this? Okay, Director Blasi nods no. Director Kylo, you're going to discuss something? No. Director Goss, do you have anything to add or discuss?
Vote against it. Vote against it.
I thought we were voting on the amendment that would lengthen the time.
Which we did. We passed.
One we're voting on now.
The main resolution with the amendment that gets added to the main resolution.
Okay, so what we're voting on now is the first 3 paragraphs that we had before and adding that time extension to it?
Yes.
Do I have that right?
Mr. Dakopoulos, the original resolution with the newly passed amendment added to replace the words in the last paragraph, is the amendment, that is what we are going to be voting on.
That's the language that Dr. Sproles has on the screen is what you have just passed. That's the amendment. So now you're voting on the full motion, the full resolution as amended by this amendment.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying, Director Hyen.
Yeah, if I could clarify for Director Goss. So all the whereases stay the same. They were not changed. It's the words after now therefore in the original resolution are gone and replaced with what we just voted for. The last
amendment. You have to unmute, please.
Yes, with the resolution, the now therefore changes to what's on the screen right now.
That is correct. Okay, Director Blasi has no comment. Director Hyen, thank you for sharing. Director Lippold, I can't see you. Yeah, any more discussion? Vice Chair Bethel or Director Lippold?
No more discussion.
All right, are we ready to take a vote on this? Dr. Kylo, how do you vote on this?
No.
Dr. Kylo votes no. Dr. Goss?
I vote yes.
Yes. Dr. Lippold, how do you vote on this?
It's Lippold-Pion, and I vote no.
No. Sorry, Dr. Lippold-Pion. Dr. Blasi, how do you vote on this?
No.
Dr. Hyen, how do you vote on this?
Yes.
Vice Chair Bethel, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Chair Chandragiri, Satya Chandragiri, I vote yes as well. So Dr. Kathy Goss, yes. Dr. Paul Kylo, no. Dr. Lippold-Pion, no. Dr. Sharon Blasi, no. Dr. Marty Hyen, yes. Vice Chair Bethel, yes. Chair Satya Chandragiri, yes. So I say it passes. The resolution with the amendment passed. So thank you very much. Can we take a 5-minute break? And I see a show of hands to just see if we can take a 5-minute break. So, all right. Thank you very much for permitting me to take a break. Director Kylo is back. Director Blassie is back. And Director Hine, are you back? Advisor Mabinton, I see. Director Hine, are you back? Okay, we're going to get back. Director Hine is, yeah. So we go to the next item, number 3, consent calendar. I would like to know if any director wants to pull any item from the consent calendar.
I move that we accept I move that we accept the consent calendar as approved, as submitted.
Okay, so you move. Is there anybody to second that?
I already requested that we pull an item and I was told it would be pulled.
All right.
Sure,
Anybody else? Director Lepol, Payon, you raised your hand.
Yeah, I was raising my hand to request to pull an item. I just didn't get that time.
All right. I had informed Director Blassie that we will be pulling an item from the consent calendar. And so that's the way we will do it. And we had talked about it in the last board meeting on 9th, if I remember right, Director Blassie, for the 9th meeting as well.
Correct.
So, Mr. DeCarpoulos, what am I supposed to do? What item you want to be pulled, Director Blassie?
Right, ask her what she wants to pull.
Yes, Director Blassie, what item would you like to be pulled out and voted
What
separately?
I requested and was approved to have pulled was the superintendent's evaluation.
Thank you. That's exactly what it was discussed, and we pulled the superintendent's evaluation is pulled out of. I just wanted to make sure we go on the record, and so thank you for clarifying that. With that, is there a motion to 3A, acceptance of grants and the consent? Anybody there to move that?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, who seconded? Okay. So Director Lepol Payon moves the 3A, acceptance of grants, and seconded by Vice Chair Bethel. Is there any discussion on this? Okay, hearing no discussion, are we ready to take a vote on this? Yes, very good. So let's start with Vice Chair Bethel. How do you vote?
Aye.
Director Hine, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Blassie?
Aye.
Director Lepol Payon?
Aye.
Director Kylo, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Goss, how do you vote?
Aye.
Satya Chandrakiri, I vote aye as well. So the motion, acceptance of grants in consent calendar 3A, is passed unanimously with no votes or abstain. Now we'll go to item number 3B, superintendent evaluation as presented in board plate. Is there anybody who wants to move the motion?
I make the motion to accept the superintendent's evaluation.
Vice Chair Bethel, and who seconded it? Director Kylo. So Vice Chair Bethel moves the motion to accept the superintendent evaluation as presented, and seconded by Director Kylo. Is there any discussion on this? Okay, Director Lepol Payon, you raised your hand, and I saw Director Glossy nod your head. Okay, there you are.
A point of order, Chair, before, I thought we couldn't discuss it because it had to do with
performance.
Personnel issue.
I thought we could not discuss it in the boardroom. We can vote on it, but I thought we could not discuss it.
Okay, thank you.
Is that correct or wrong?
Mr. Dacopoulos?
The evaluation happens under the public meeting law and the superintendent's contract in an executive session, which you've already had. So the evaluation has been completed. If there are individual remarks about what's on the consent calendar, I think the board's traditionally thanked the superintendent at this point of time, and we've never considered that an evaluation. It's just a thank you. So, but I urge the board not to get into details of the superintendent's confidential evaluation.
Thank you for clarifying that. So we'll start with Director Lepol-Pion. As long as we discuss it within the guidelines provided, Mr. Dacopoulos, we appreciate that.
I'd actually like the other directors to speak first, just because.
All right, Director Blassie.
So a couple of things. First, I want to thank the superintendent, and I apologize to you that your evaluation was put on consent calendar and not mentioned. I don't even know what to say.
All right.
But I'm going to, and I'm gonna give myself a couple of minutes to collect my thoughts, because I think it's appropriate. And I am obviously I'm speaking on behalf of myself, but I do think that I speak for a lot of our community and for our district when I say thank you to you for the work that you did during the evaluation period, which did cover some very tough times. And the thing that always comes to mind when I think about you and your work and the work of your team, Craig and Ethan and Sylvia and everyone, Mike, I just am always so impressed with your focus on the students and their families and your focus on equity. And I know that you have been working so hard. And despite all of the challenges that we've faced in the world during a pandemic and fires, and you guys just forge ahead despite the challenges, and you put students and families first. And you always ask the question, what's best for students? And I think it's unfortunate that you weren't recognized by this board for being not only nominated, not only being the superintendent of the year for the state of Oregon, but for also being one of 4 finalists for the national superintendent of the year. And I think that's telling that nothing was said. And this is really, really hard for me to say, because I know that we're not supposed to speak about your evaluation, but I want to speak about your performance. Your performance is just unique. and I really, when I think about leaders, I wish that I could be like you. And we are so blessed in this community to have you at the helm of this district. But the other thing I want to say is I am not voting yes for your evaluation, because it's wrong. It doesn't reflect what I just said. Thank you.
Thank you. So Dr. Goss, you want to say next?
I also had problems with the evaluation, and I just got to be upright and open about it. Superintendent Perry is the best superintendent I have ever worked for. And believe me, I have worked for several, and I have been a superintendent. And Superintendent Perry deserves rave reviews. Now, being the best superintendent that I've ever had does not mean that we always agree. As you know, sometimes we don't. But that's just a perspective difference. That never changes for 2 seconds what I think of your ability, your drive, and your representation for not just our kids, but our entire city. And I admire you a great deal. As far as what I vote on your evaluation, I don't know how to say it. I don't know what to do with that. So if it was up to me, it'd be a mile long and it would have nothing but wonderful things to say.
I want to again ask the board to please restrict your comments to not the evaluation. This is a confidential personnel matter for the superintendent, as all evaluations are for our employees. So please refrain from talking about what's in the evaluation.
I think I did, maybe I didn't, but I'm done talking.
Thank you. Dr. Jesse Lippold-Peon.
Thank you. Sorry, I needed a couple minutes to gather my thoughts. Mr. Dikopoulos, while if a board member cannot speak about what's inside of an evaluation, could a board member speak about the process of which conversations took place? But it doesn't contain anything inside the evaluation.
No, this is a chance to talk about what's here on the consent calendar. The process, the evaluation process was a confidential process, and I urge the board members to respect that.
Thank you. Well, I'll say this. In the action item itself, if you read this action item, I would say that I agree with the final conclusion that's stated in this action item. I would say that Christy Perry has led the district through a lot. Overall, improved overall student achievement, and has done what we expect of her as an employer. It's important to note that Superintendent Perry, even became, as a couple of the board members said, one of 4 candidates to be considered as National Superintendent of the Year, which has got to speak for something. She doesn't wear that or talk about it or, brag about it on the town, but it did happen. And it didn't happen for political reasons or this or that. It happened because she does a dang good job. With that said, I would say that I think it's important as a general statement, not in regards to said evaluation, for us to follow proper procedures and when we stray from proper procedures and results stay hidden from everybody except for an employer and employee, for example, it could leave room for discrimination hidden from public eye. I'm not going to go, of course I can't say much about other than that. I would just say at a later time after this meeting, I plan to request for our board to review the superintendent evaluation process and come up with a clear and data-driven model for how to do this in a way that is fair to the employer, to the employee, and that holds both parties accountable. I think that's something that we would all like to have. With that said, we've all reached the same conclusion at the end of the day that Christy Perry is a great superintendent and has the best interests of kids at heart. Our community and our school district are tackling issues that other districts aren't even talking about, honestly. And I know that all of us wish to learn from the past mistakes and move forward. This work is messy. It opens up old wounds. It hurts. People get hurt. But in the end, we will have systems that are made to fit the needs of all kids. And that makes it all worth it. Thank you, Superintendent Perry, for your focus on kids and not just on yourself. And thank you for your willingness to roll up your sleeves and do the work.
Thank you. That's very kind of you. Any other comments? Vice Chair Bethel, go ahead.
I appreciate that Director Lippold-Peon suggested a potential new process in the future. I would totally support that. I think this is a difficult process just to understand throughout. It was a steep learning curve for me. But with that said, I want to say thank you to Superintendent Perry for showing up every day. it's been a remarkable period of time. I don't know if it was just the last year or the last couple of years, but you continue to show up and do the work, and you're committed, and I admire that. And I don't necessarily agree with everything, but I do want you to know that I'm grateful that you show up, and that that you do put kids first, and that you're open to conversations, and that you put yourself out there. And I think that's really difficult to do in a position of your magnitude. And so, yeah, that's what I've got.
Dr. Kylo, you have a few words to say. Dr. Hyen, and then I'll go to Dr. Goss. Dr. Hyen.
Yes, thank you. I echo what Vice Chair Bethel said, and I agree with Director Lippel-Pion that some changes need to be made. I think we've talked about that over the years, but maybe never quite sure how. I find it very frustrating to have a process where this evaluation period, the last day was June 30th. A lot of people in the public may not understand that. And the time frame from June 30th through now until June 30th again is going to be next March. And I would like to see something that's a little more time sensitive and current in our processes.
Thank you, Dr. Hyen. Dr. Goss, your hand is raised again.
I just forgot to take it down after
I just want to say, Superintendent Perry, I kind of became an accidental chair, but I kind of learned quite a lot in this process. And this was an important journey in my entire career. I never had such an experience. So thank you. Thank you for challenging me to think beyond my comfort zone. I really appreciate that. It may not be so apparent, but I dug deep. I learned about the systemic barriers our children face, the structural barriers. And from you challenged me. And in that process, I leaned towards that challenge, as you rightly point out. I tried my best, coming as an immigrant from a totally different part of the world. This whole thing was new, but I grew in the process. I want you to know. And it's only because of you challenging me. In addition to all the positive things that has been said, it was perhaps one of the toughest journey that you had to face, and you did a good job of being there, challenging me, challenging us. Sometimes it didn't make sense to me, but I still stuck to it. Sometimes some of the books you told me to read, I went and read. I want to confess, I didn't read all of them, but still. And you have been very responsive when I suggested Dr. Marks, Bryant Marks from Morehouse College. I would like somebody from outside to come and teach us. That is an example. So when I heard that, Dr. Marks in OSBA, and I suggested you were very ready in making sure the resources are available for all of us. I brought with me a bunch of, with my own implicit bias, having grown up in India, and the whole thing was a new experience. It's when you started asking me to think beyond, outside my bubble. And when I suggested Dr. Marks, you readily agreed. Not only you readily agreed, but you made sure I got 3 opportunities for free to attend those classes and learn. It was an eye-opening experience for me. It wasn't always easy with all kinds of back-to-back disasters the community faced, but we made it. And I really appreciate what you have done. You literally ran the whole cities, the counties, infrastructure during that time. Whether it's feeding our children and making sure digital divide we have overcome the digital divide. Your leadership during the crisis and your team's leadership during the crisis is something that I learned, and I never done anything like this in such seen anything so close at such a large magnitude. It was humbling experience for me. And And in the process, we learned so much, and I'm confident that moving forward, we will make the necessary changes, hold necessary courageous conversation, and you will be helping steer the ship forward. So thank you for all your services. That's really important for me. I might not have formally thanked in front of a board or might have said something, but thank you for putting up with me. I know it wasn't always easy, but we did it. So thank you. And I appreciate your services for our community and our children and the whole district. It has been a blessing for me to serve our community alongside all of you. Yes, we are going to call for the vote. So can we kind of go around and we'll start with Director Hine.
I vote no.
Okay, Vice Chair Bethel.
Yes.
Dr. Blasi.
No.
Dr. Lipolpion.
No.
Okay. Dr. Kylo.
Yes.
Dr. Goss. I can't hear you, Dr. Goss.
That's because I wasn't talking.
Oh, sorry.
I vote no because we could do it so much better.
Okay. I vote yes.
Good.
So
Good. Fails.
it fails.
Correct.
Chair Chandrakiri, yes. Vice Chair Bethel, yes. Dr. Hine, no. Dr. Blasi, no. Dr. Leopold, no. Dr. Kylo, yes. Dr. Goss, no.
Good.
Right.
Good, motherfucker.
All right. Thank you. We'll go to the next item.
Can I just make a
Director Blasi, your mic was on.
Good. I'm terribly sorry, but good.
I don't think cussing in a meeting is appropriate.
I'm just my sincere apologies. It showed that it was on mute, but I just continue to be appalled. So I'm very, very sorry that you heard that, but I'm just appalled with this.
All right.
So I'm going to make just a couple comments. One is I think now you need to figure out with your legal counsel what you actually do about my evaluation. Number two, if before you change the evaluation process, you really do need to go back to my contract. So I just want that on the public record that I do have a contract with you. And I appreciate the people that made kind comments. It has been the toughest leadership of a lifetime, and it is made tougher when we don't have a high functioning board. So with that, I'll close out my comments.
Right. Thank you. Mr. Dakopoulos, would you like to weigh in terms of superintendent evaluation 3/15/2021 deadline? Have we completed the process, technical process of?
Well, the evaluation stands. What you've not voted for is the summary. And so I will be meeting with board leadership to discuss with you your options moving forward, which I would not choose to do in public. So for now, the evaluation summary has failed to pass. And we will have to discuss the board's next steps. So, and that won't be tonight.
Okay. So by 3/15/2021 was a deadline. So technically we have followed the deadline.
The superintendents received the evaluation. This is the summary.
Okay.
So again, let's talk about this, not in this board meeting.
Thank you very much. All right, with that, I'll turn the next item of reports to Superintendent Perry.
I'd just like a 2-minute break before I give a report,
yes,
please.
Thank you. Yes, please.
I'm so frustrated by this sort of public display on behalf of our kids. So just actually give me 5.
Yes, please. We'll now move to the section on reports. Superintendent Perry, please go ahead.
All right, the first report is about in-person board meeting transition. And Mike started that report last time, and I think we were cut off and there were fits and starts. So my question to you is, do you want him to go back through the slides, or do you just want to open it up to questions for him?
Director Kyler, go ahead.
I would prefer just questions. The slides were included in the packet. It makes sense. So when we're ready, I have a question or two.
Go ahead, Director Kyler.
Mike, are you here?
Yes.
My question is, Mike, if I go to the grocery store and I bump against someone, how do I know if they're COVID or not? So when I have to come to the meeting and I have to answer yes or no, how do I honestly answer no if I don't know?
Yeah. Well, that's a real situation.
I understand. That's why I'm asking it.
Yeah. We would have to do the best that we can, and presenting symptoms. The 3 questions is basically, have you been in contact with any positive COVID-19 to the best of your knowledge?
Is that what the question says?
It's the assumption. We can work through it in more detail with you, but it's kind of on the honor system. And if you answer no, then the next question is, are you sick? If you answer no, then the next question is, are you presenting any COVID-related symptoms? And so if it's no to all 3, you can enter the building.
See, my problem is I can't answer yes or no because I don't know who has it, who doesn't. Unfortunately, they don't wear signs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And also, I'm not sure which symptoms you would be talking about. Yeah, because there are many.
There are.
And I can, one of the symptoms I understand is a rash, which they don't recognize every place as a symptom, but yet some doctors do, some doctors don't. So I'm just not sure how I would answer that, or to the best of my knowledge, I don't believe I am. Is that, perhaps that's an option as opposed to yes and no?
You know, and what I would offer to you, Director Kylo, is sure, when in doubt, then we do have virtual participation as part of the options as well.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
I just want to add one thing too, is remember the 3 foundational safety mechanisms: wash your hands, wear face coverings, stay 6 feet, and we'll make sure that upon entering or exiting, you do all of those. That'll be part of the routine we'd like you to walk through.
Thank you. Director Hine. Oh, sorry, Director Gauss first, and then we'll go to you, Director.
I am so in favor of that type of an organization. I think we've suffered a great deal from not having face-to-face communication between all of us. And I would be happy to answer questions, and I support going back. And Mike, you've done a wonderful job in setting it up.
Thank you. Dr. Hine.
I think I missed the first 30 seconds. I set a 5-minute timer, but I'm not sure what I missed exactly. I did hear on I was going to say CCTV, but the CDC was maybe changing the rules. This may not apply to our meetings, but might be changing the rules about 6 foot for kids to 3 feet. And it looks like Superintendent Perry has probably heard that as well. I don't know if that's going to become a rule or whatever, but if that's true, that would be certainly exciting to get more of our kids in school. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
I did hear that today in our meeting with updated RSSL guidance, that it's not yet, but they do. Our OH, Oregon Health Authority, is watching that CDC guidance very carefully, and 3 feet would help.
Thank you.
But right now we're still at the 6 foot. And we would have the same for the board meeting as well.
And then I know Director Blassie had asked us at the last board meeting, and I want to make sure that it's still an option. If we're feeling a little under the weather or not feeling like we could come in, or we're somewhere else but want to participate fully, will there continue to be a Zoom option for the board?
There will be a virtual option for the board, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Director Blassie, you want to say
something? Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Okay. So yeah, that was so it wasn't so much of a question, but a concern, I guess, that I'd raised last time about not all of us having the potential to be vaccinated when this starts, concerns about whether or not people practice proper social distancing, because I know we've seen things on social media that would indicate otherwise, and I think that's a little concerning. I guess the question I have is, are staff going to be required to be there? Because I think it's one thing to have those requirements when fellow educators have the opportunity to be vaccinated, but when they're in a public setting with board members, and then I guess the other question is with regards to the budget committee, which will be much larger. I guess I'm concerned about whether staff have the same option that board members have to not be present physically.
So I'll answer that, and it will be very limited staff that have access. All educators in Salem-Keizer have had access to vaccinations. And so from my vantage point, the executive team would be required to attend, unless, of course, there's any symptoms, any uncertainty about illness, they would need to, of course, not come in and have a virtual option. And that's why it's really also important to have a virtual option, because you don't want to incentivize coming in by you have to come in if you're not feeling well.
Thank you.
And we should be modeling that.
Any other questions on? Go ahead, Vice Chair Bethel.
I don't have any questions. I just want to thank Mike and Superintendent Perry for moving this forward. It really was at my ask, and to just kind of use Superintendent Perry's words, modeling. We've asked our educators to come back into buildings and to teach kids. And I really believe it's important that we do the same thing, that we come back together and do the work in person. And there's always those options, whether you're vaccinated or not. And I know that there's a lot of educators that had that choice. And I'm really grateful that they're moving ahead to teach kids. And I'd like to move ahead to be a board in person to do the work.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really want to thank Superintendent Perry, Mr. Wolf, and Vice Chair Bethel for kind of bringing this concept up. And I really think it'll be good to sit in person. It'll be like, I missed that, breaking the bread and, sitting down and kind of getting to know each other, which we used to have before. I don't think we can have now, but really it served a very important purpose. And thank you for all that organizational thing that you put in place. To work in different places. Those are three reasonable questions, but sometimes we don't know who else is COVID positive. So often the question is framed as, do you know any known case of COVID where you're close to them, as opposed to saying asymptomatic carrier was next to you.
Right.
So
yes, and these are the same check-in, check-out system questions that we've implemented. We've implemented this for months. So we feel we've got a good solid system in place. I will say it's a team effort. It's safety and risk management, it's facilities, it's technology. So we're ready for the next meeting to be in person and virtual, and we'll learn from that experience.
And I really want to say thank you very much. And I personally feel, as leadership, we can't ask somebody else to do something, but we are not prepared to do ourselves. So, lead from the front. And I will be there in person. And, if I have to double mask, wear a gown and sit in gloves or whatever it takes, because it really makes a big difference to be the model for that, for the whole organization. So thank you very much. Let's go to the next item. If I don't see any other question, Dr. Leopold-Pion often has question. I don't see him. All right.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hey, yeah, I would just say that, I think that, you guys hit on everything that I would think of. I would just say that, we shouldn't be expecting kids or teachers to do something that we're not willing to do. I'm in support of this, but I do think it takes, a real commitment from us to address the concern that Director Blassie brought up, right, of making sure that we are also, living up to that, and making sure that we're committed as a board to not put others in danger. So
thank you.
But yeah, I'm in support of these, having stuff in person.
Thank you. Superintendent Perry, the next item is community bond oversight.
The next item is the Community Bond Oversight Committee report. This is our annual report. You've had it in your board packet last Tuesday and again from Friday to now. And I'm going to have Mike Wolf, our Chief Operations Officer, just give you a couple highlights. There's lots in this bond program that we really need to be proud of. And in fact, the ability to pull this off in COVID is even more remarkable with all the other moving pieces. So Mike, thank you for your leadership. And if you'd also highlight this report for the board.
Thank you, Superintendent Perry. So this is the second annual report. We're pleased to bring this to you. We would just like to start by acknowledging our co-chairs, Lisa Harnish, Mark Shipman, and Nancy McMorris-Oddix. Continuity of leadership from the very beginning of this process all the way through implementation has been, quite frankly, exceptional. We've also had board members involved as liaisons, Director Hyen, Director Bethel, Director Leopold-Pion, and also cameo appearances by Director Kylo on certain projects. So very much appreciated all the way through. I would highlight the second page basically in the presentation, the bond program update. This just came out today. I hadn't even had a chance to talk with Superintendent Perry, but our rating from Moody, the investment services group, was under review. In fact, all school districts in Oregon are under review right now. And we were able to, we were just informed that our AA2 rating was reaffirmed, which is not something that every school district gets to hear. In fact, some of them have been downgraded already. And that's in large part to our strong financial position and strong internal management leadership structure. They very much appreciate what we've got in place. So just wanted to share that with you. And then briefly, I know this has been a long meeting. I just want to let you know that the Community Bond Oversight Committee is really engaged. We have our quarterly meetings. They're a delight. We're actually able to do tours of structures, projects. The next one will be in either April or May, and we'll be touring South, which is coming along nicely. There's the picture of the new auditorium that you see at the bottom of this page. And I would encourage you to go to the Skycam and you can see all the tilt-up walls that went up at the South. So it's super exciting about where we are in the bond project. We did experience some issues this year, not the least of which was the pandemic, but also the wildfires as well. Corporate activity tax drove some cost higher, and we've lined out those. I already briefed the board on these previously, but I wanted to put them in the annual report. The last page of the report is really the program successes and challenges. 2021 is our busiest year of the program. We have 41 projects that are either in active construction design or in the planning phases. And so this was the year where everything sort of stacked on top of each other. Want to acknowledge the construction team and Day CPM who are working tirelessly, that's a tough one, throughout this project, and Joel Smallwood and his leadership is much appreciated. So with that, I would open it up to any, one more thing, I'm sorry. It's not on the report, but it will be in the next CBOC meeting and will come to the board after that meeting. We're at a point, we have nearly $90 million of unallocated program contingency. So we're at a point where we're making a proposal to allocate approximately half of that to a repair, replacement, and renovation program. We're doing a little higher math here. It will be the R-cubed program, and it really will focus on the long-term work that needs to happen in the district. And the nice part is we're at a point in the program this size where you're kind of looking around to make sure you've got enough funds to finish the work. We are in a position where that's not a concern for us at this point. In fact, we're ready to make a proposal to dedicate some of those funds for ongoing work as we wrap the bond up. And we'll be bringing all of that information to the board after we work it through the CBOC at their next meeting. So with that, Superintendent Perry, was there anything that you wanted to highlight?
Oh, just mainly the hard work of your team and all that they're managing as we gear up for the 41 sites or however many are in construction. Really, it's the way you've structured it and the skill of your team. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Good job. We'll open it up for any questions. Who would like to go first? I can't see everybody. Oh, there you go. Okay, we'll start with Vice Chair Bethel, then we'll go to Director Hine.
I'll be quick because I agree it's been a long meeting. I just want to say, Mike, thank you. You and your team have really led an excellent CBOC. You're always available to answer our questions and kind of put our concerns at ease. I think we have an amazing committee that's been kind of moving through this with you. And I'm actually really excited to see South. I sadly missed McKay. And I'm excited for that upcoming conversation about those dollars and the reallocation of them. I think the board will be very excited once the CBOC sees it, but overall to see what can happen when you have somebody of your magnitude at the helm with finances really moving us forward. So thank you. And thank you, Superintendent Perry, for supporting him through that.
Director Hine?
Vice Chair Bethel said it wonderfully, so I don't need to repeat it. Thank you, Mike. Director
Lepol-Pion.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say thank you to, Superintendent Perry, Mike Wolf and his team in the district, just because, I've been a part of the CBOC committee since the beginning of it, and along with, Directors Hine and Directors Bethel when she was elected on. And we could just say, at least from my perspective, watching it, it's due to, excellent management of finances, being responsible, and not over-promising to the people, which I think goes a really long way in showing people, hey, we're asking you to invest in our schools and we're going to do it wisely. And I think that this is a great reflection of that. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Director Kylo?
I just want to say, Mike, thank you for not cutting down all the trees at Grant.
You're welcome.
All right. Any other feedback? Director Blasey, you're going to say something?
Yeah, it's amazing to watch the physical progress, but just the way the money's been managed over the years, and to have a team that continues to grow the money, to allow more flexibility. I mean, you guys, your management over not just the construction, but the financial piece, and to, in this environment, to continue to have the top bond rating that the district has, is just phenomenal. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Advisor Mabinton, you have anything? Then I'll go to Director Hine.
All I want to say is thank you all. I trust you. You have a child of your own, so you always make the right decisions. You're very responsible. There was a time where I probably didn't agree, but I agree with you now. And I just appreciate you work. Just working close with you too. I see you do a lot. So thank you, and thank you, Superintendent.
It's okay to call him Wolf.
Yes, I call him Wolf. I'm going to call him that forever.
Wolf child. Director Hine, you're going to say something?
I already dittoed what Vice Chair Bethel said. I mean, she covered it perfectly for me.
All right. Director Goss, you're going to say something.
I said mine early, but your accountability is wonderful. You know, I look around at some of the jobs the city has done in the last 10 years without accountability. And Mike, you just surged ahead. Good job.
Superintendent Perry, thank you very much. And Mr. Wolf, amazing job. Your command and control is appreciated. You've done a good job. You've been fiscally responsible and perhaps the only agency in the whole state which is fiscally responsible, and you have some extra left for moving forward. Is unheard of in our state. So good job. Thank you for all that you've done.
Great team. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. You and you've done a good job. Thank you. So also the team. I appreciate that. Our schools are having a wonderful look. When the kids come back, it's going to be great. You know, McKay, I went and saw the building, the old building, their little, now it's kind of complete facelift. It looks like a university campus to me more than high school anymore. So it really makes a lot. You know, those kids deserve that. Superintendent Perry will go through the item C, 4C. And
all right, the first executive limitation report, financial administration. I think I would say that you have just seen the evidence of how we fiscally manage the school district. In addition, what I want to draw your attention to is number 3, where it says, I shall not fail to fill and debt the organization unless authorized by the board. I want to remind you that you took action for a new transportation facility and also additional bus purchases. We're in the process. We've completed the solicitation for the buses and the facility design is well underway. And really, a good tribute to our organization that we still have that rating. That's based on all of our financial management and our ability to articulate well the mission of the district. In addition, under number 7, I just want to remind you that you do receive your quarterly financial reports. You just received one for December. As we're prepping for the next biennium, currently, the state school fund is projected at $9.1 billion. That was where the governor came in. A roll forward budget for us is $9.6 to $9.8 billion from the state school fund, and the governor's budget is at 9.1. While we're seeing the student investment account dollars and federal CARES Act dollars, what we might not be seeing is enough dollars in the state school fund in order to have a current service level. So I just want to put a marker in that for you to know we see that coming. We're planning ahead. We're saving dollars towards the ending fund balance so that we aren't laying off positions in the general fund for next year. So we've got a process in place, but just know that's part of our management strategy. And you need to start thinking ahead to think about what is our financial recovery plan, because there will be financial impact to COVID. Just one-time federal funds for to put dollars in the district don't help in that 3 to 5 year forecast. And it's been one of the strengths of, I think, our Mike and I's tenure here to do whatever we can to prepare for what could happen in the future. And we've seen that, including that many districts had to use a lot of their student investment account dollars to backfill gen fund expenditures. So just know that, and I'll open it up for any questions about executive limitation number 8.
Any questions board have? All right, let's
I have
move to the
one.
next.
You maybe can't
go
see
ahead,
me.
Vice Chair Beth. Like,
Dance
sorry.
through my window. And it's just in regard to the bus purchases, and you can, this may be off topic just a bit, but we've struggled over the last year with bus drivers and getting adequate number of bus drivers. And I just want to confirm that our bus purchase isn't necessarily adding buses to the fleet, but potentially replacing some buses so it doesn't create additional burden for staffing those buses. Or did I understand? It was a while ago.
Yeah, that is correct. And I'll let Mike chime in if I don't get it quite right. But there was some additional staffing needs because of the boundary changes. But the expenditures on buses were related to replacement and keeping us on a path towards replacement, so that in the future we just didn't have buses that didn't run and no dollars to purchase them.
Okay, thank you.
Director Lippold-Pion.
Oh yeah, I had a question about the debt in regards to that. Thought of it as, you know, Director Bethel was speaking. So the debt that we incurred onto that, if I remember the conversation correctly, we're going to be receiving federal funding to cover a good chunk of that debt. Is that correct? How is that debt being managed, and what's our plan to pay it off?
There are multiple ways. First of all, it's not a pass-through for additional dollars to taxpayers like you would with a facilities capital construction bond. But there's depreciation that we get on buses and reimbursement for expenditures like this through the state transportation grant at 70%. There were some incentive dollars for purchasing buses, and there were also there's also going to be a little bit of gen fund expenditures that you'll see in the budget process. So multiple ways. And did I miss any of the ways, Mike?
No, no, you didn't, Superintendent Perry. And we presented the financial plan to the board as part of your approval process. And we can bring that back at any time and give you an update.
Mr. Wolf, you had also mentioned there was one for energy efficient buses. There was some kind of extra little dollars added to it.
Yeah, actually, it's the Volkswagen settlement grant that we were able to tap into, and that will account for about 52 buses that grant will help subsidize. And so what that does is it gets us, we have a requirement to meet the EPA standards by 2025. This purchase and the grant meets that requirement prior to 2025 for us. I think you had mentioned something, you were interested in like an electric bus.
Yes.
And we had that conversation a while back too. They're not up to production scale. So, we may be able to find one, but it would be a demonstration, not a fleet.
Yeah, you did mention some kind of energy efficient. I was not able to recall, so thank you for helping us understand. Is there anybody I missed in this thing? Director Kylo, I thought you were going to say something. No. Well, perhaps we can go to next item, Superintendent Perry.
All right, the next item is executive limitation number 9, asset protection. This is a fairly standard response to our asset protection, but I want to remind you of a couple things. Under number 2, as a reminder, we are a district self-insured fund for our insurance, but we do carry additional liability insurance and additional insurance on a number of policies. We've outlined those in section 2 there. Fail to maintain excess insurance to cover losses in number 3. And then in number 5, I just wanted to remind you that we did bring forward the purchase for the D Street property. for the North Salem High School project. And there's a little bit more work to do there, but I just wanted to highlight that in the report. So with that, I will open up this one for questions.
Any questions any of the board have? Director Lepol-Pion, did you say something? No, any other director? I can't see everybody's, all the windows. All right, hearing none, we'll go to the next item, Superintendent Perry, executive limitation number 10.
All right, executive limitation number 10. It's the 10th of the 12 monitoring reports. And I just want to, I think from a big picture standpoint, while it's not really covered in this report, I just want to do a huge shout out to our facilities and custodial departments. The Ready Schools, Safe Learners, guidance, working with Oregon, OSHA, and with all the CDC recommendations. So much of that falls on our facilities department and how they have managed that in the last full year of COVID has been pretty extraordinary. And in addition, you think about not only the pandemic, but wildfires, and then now the ice storm, that they've all had to be all hands on deck. So it wasn't a good place to make that comment. But again, it's really been fairly extraordinary. Under number 3 is a big highlight on our 2018 bond. And you had a report on this, so I don't need to go into more detail. But the one thing I need you to have on your radar is it is now time to enter the long range facility planning again. So we feel like we're in the middle of construction, and at the same time, we're going to need to engage in long-range facilities planning. If we remember back to the 2018 bond, we went facilities planning to the board, to the ballot. So it's a long process now to circle back and update our long-range facility plan. And I would recommend we do that in a facilities committee structure when we get to the place that we're ready to have that conversation. That worked really well for us to have our community engaged in that level. And then as a reminder, under number 7, the any of the changes in the general obligation bond have gone through the CBOC and then to the board if they were substantial changes to bond programming or finances. So we've captured that in there, but I think we've kept you fairly up to date. And with that, I will open it up to questions.
Dr. Hyan, your hand is up.
Yes, thank you. I could be wrong on my memory, but I think there was a bond for facility work upgrades, right? That was the 2008 one, or? Oh,
prior to the 2018 one?
Yes. Mm-hmm. There was a bond to do repairs and things like that. I'm hoping that we do not foresee needing to go that route again. And I was just curious because I think people are having struggles enough paying for all the construction that we have going on. I'm just trying to get a sense of your thoughts. You know, I know you probably haven't thought about it a lot, but your thoughts and feelings about the.
Yeah, the first step in the process is to required by statute is to update the long range facilities plan. So that will be how we will initiate because we're required to do that by statute. And within that, we'll also look at enrollment and any of the ongoing needs of repair and maintenance in the district as we update that plan. So it will be a comprehensive look at all of our facilities, plus the enrollment to see if there's any need for growth. In 2008, there was also the building of 3 schools as a part of that grant or that general obligation bond. And remember in this one, were no schools in that. We're easily multiple years away from talking about a bond, but the first step is long range facility plan that will give us an assessment of that.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Vice Chair Bethel, your hand is up.
I just want to echo what Superintendent Perry said about facilities staff. I had a great conversation the other day with a community member who called me on the phone and said, you know, why do we have all these people at schools and there's no kids there? And I was like, well, it turns out there's a lot going on in those buildings to get kids back there. And we've had kids in schools doing Lippy for a bit. But when you mentioned the ice storm, it just occurred to me that we have components of this district, like let's say Marion County Public Works, that continues to pivot more and more and more every time there seems to be a new natural disaster.
Yep.
And I think it's a testament to the facilities team that they always just show up and get the jobs done. I spent a short moment, for about 2 weeks at Whitaker for volleyball with my daughter, and the trees along the perimeter were destroyed because of the ice storm. And they didn't last long. I mean, of course, I think facilities must have came in like Saturday or something and assessed all the properties and put up caution. And they just do such a great job of responding when people really have no idea what they do. And I'm just really grateful for them because they're continuously keeping kids safe. And they're just kind of the silent doers in the back. So I just really want to put that out there. Thanks for mentioning it so I could reiterate that.
Even the people who are helping know how many buildings are still without power, giving us the status updates. When I give you the status update on any of that, that's evidence of all the work behind the scenes on that.
Thank you very much. Is there any other comments? Director Hine, your hand is raised again. Director Goss, you're going to say something.
I do. So this is why I said you were one of the best superintendents I had ever worked for. People need to realize all the pots you have your fingers in. They are enormous, and you do a wonderful job at it. And Michael too.
Thank you, Director Goss, for saying those. Those are important. Yeah. Is there any other comments or feedback? Hearing none, shall we move to the next item, the board meeting schedule. Our next meeting will be, it's displayed. So next meeting will be April 13th. We're hoping to have in-person meeting, if I remember right. I'm excited to be there. And any other questions? All right.
I just want to make a note that we are starting with budget committee meetings. I think there might, as we talked today, there might be a number of reports that we'll want to invite the budget committee to listen in on in the next couple meetings, but we'll get a schedule of kind of what those reports are out to you. And also, I do think we're going to have to be super careful about how we think about the budget committee and whether in person or not, just based on the numbers for the room. So we'll get the April 13th meeting in person, and then we will start thinking about the budget committee process. I did sense that there is a little disagreement on whether or not we should be coming back in person. We're going to move forward with coming to in-person board meetings unless we get direction otherwise.
Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you, Superintendent Perry. That's for those reports. Now we'll kind of go to the board reports. We'll start with Advisor Mebinton. I want to start with Advisor Mebinton. Advisor Mebinton, you want to share something exciting, good work you've done between the last business meeting and now?
I'm going to talk with my camera off because I think it's better that way. The last things I've been doing, just school, really. Babysitting, spending a lot of time with family. We're going to go back to school, so I'm super excited about that. Basketball. I've been going to basketball practices. Those are just my highlights. I'm team manager, so I don't play, but I get to be basketball team manager for the boys basketball. So me and I sit there and we talk and we figure out different ways, and I help run plays. So that's fun. But that's all that I've really been doing, just those quality things.
Advisor Mebinton is very humble. She doesn't want to share everything. Would you like to share joining Sir Richardson and the team from Boston? But
yes, I am very humble. I did have a meeting that I thought was an honor to be a part of and to continue to be a part of. I got to meet with a doctor and Chair Sean DeGeary and Ms. Richardson and Oni Marchbanks and Dr. Brown. And we got to talk about the barriers of African-American students and what we could do going forward and leading a program for African-American students. And I'm really excited. And I got to put my input on that and just excited to move forward and do that. That was a really good meeting. So I'm looking forward to the next one.
Thank you very much for your leadership. Who else wants to go next? Director Lepol-Pion. Oh, sorry. Vice Chair Bethel. Then we'll go to Director.
So I've had the pleasure of, oh my gosh, so I didn't do board reports in February. So I feel like it was January and February that I was able to participate in some meetings with Superintendent Perry and Dr. Sprouls and Dr. Udo Senata in regards to the RSSL and COVID and getting kids back in school. And man, if you folks haven't read the RSSL, I really think you should, because it's a testament to the challenges that our school district, being the second largest district in the state of Oregon, is tested with for safety to get kids back in school. And this team is doing an excellent job of checking all those boxes and negotiating in the places they need to negotiate to just focus on kids in classrooms. And then I can't reveal anything yet, but on Saturday, this Saturday at 7 p.m., there's going to be a video from the Keizer Chamber of Commerce coming out for some Keizer Awards that are selected every year. And there's a Service to Education Award that was honored to a teacher in Keizer last week. And Superintendent Perry, I don't know if she rearranged her schedule, but she worked from McNary to be there. And I'm really grateful that you did that. And I'm excited for the community reveal, because I'm really so blessed to be a parent of students that are taught by such phenomenal educators. So I'm sure there's more, but it's been a long night. And so this Saturday at 7 p.m., here's the PSA, watch for it on Local Access TV or the Keizer Chamber YouTube page so you can see who it is. And then I know the school district's going to do some information on it probably next week too.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Dr. Lepol-Pion, you have anything?
No, I got nothing. I'm totally kidding. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I mean, I've been just working a lot on the by zone resolution. That took up a lot of my time, as well as other policies that I've been looking at, studying and researching. So that way I can focus on just doing the work and changing our systems to better serve kids. That's a lot of kind of what I've been doing. I've gotten a lot better at it over the past couple of years. I would say that, I've been learning a lot about our school system out on the parent side of things, because I learned how to use Parent View. Oh, that is the greatest tool ever known to mankind. So, been learning a lot about, things that the district has to offer from like the parent perspective. I think that's been really cool. On my the Native American Indian and Alaska Native Council for the National School Boards Association, I got appointed as our media officer. So basically, I'm going to be starting up a social media account, reaching out to the tribes in the 11 states that I represent, to try to get tribes more involved in conversations around education, because a lot of times, like the African American caucus and the Hispanic councils, those councils on the national level are really strong. The Native American one isn't as much, just because sometimes we can get isolated. It's just a part of our culture, I think. And So what I'm going to be doing is trying to bring people together to so that way we can increase the graduation rates and the success for Native American students. On the Mid-Willamette Valley Homeless Alliance that I'm on the executive board of along with Superintendent Perry, they've been doing a lot of really good work, making really good progress toward addressing homelessness in our community. It's just a step forward. It's a long process, but we're one step forward in getting the system together so that way we can have more funds and hopefully have our Built for Zero homeless initiative in the next couple of years. So I'm sure there's more, but that's all that's on the top of my head. So
thank you very much. Dr. Blasey, you want to share?
No, there is a COG board meeting tomorrow, so be attending that. I know they held their annual meeting and they welcomed the new COG executive director officially, and I'm drawing a blank on his name, but I'll share more after our first meeting. So I think that's about it. I do want to take just a second to offer my sincere apology for what happened earlier. I'm finding myself in a place right now where I'm very frustrated with, and I'm just going to be frank, I'm very frustrated with the board and some of the things that I've seen transpire, probably more behind the scenes, but that's not, it doesn't make it okay. But I'm just frustrated with the lack of transparency around things. I'm frustrated with, I think, the way our superintendent has been treated. And it came out, and I apologize, but it's not okay and not acceptable. So my apologies, but it's been a rough couple months with some things on this board. So
thank you, Director Blasey. Dr. Kylo, you have anything, please? Dr. Goss?
Nothing that's earth-shaking that I'm ready to share.
Thank you. I cover everybody. Dr. Hyen?
Given the late hour, I will pass so that we can adjourn because I'm tired and I'm sure everybody else is as well.
I just have two important things. I really felt, it's an honor, Superintendent Perry, for recommending Ms. Cynthia Richardson and Advisor Mebinton for joining in connecting with Dr. Moreland Kapuya from Harvard Medical School and starting a mentorship program concept for African-American Black students using African-American Black university students under the mentorship of Black leaders, and having a local NAACP or another local nonprofit agency to kind of host it so that it can help, close the achievement gap. I hope we can kind of proceed this way, and I hope Advisor Mebinton finds another junior so that we can continue this leadership, and that way it will make a big difference. So we'll have the follow-up meeting. There's also from University of Pennsylvania, Dr. Anderson has also agreed to join. So I really want to thank Superintendent Perry and Advisor Mebinton, and our local NAACP chapter, Dr. Brown, was very instrumental in guiding. And Ms. Oni Marchbank and our equity nonprofit, amazing group of people, and I only see good things can happen. The second important thing was, it was such an honor to attend the service of Pastor Brooks and his church, where we went and talked about school reentry and also joined the program with Chakusi language and describing to the community. So thank you for being inclusive and allowing me to join that. So it's such an honor. It was nice to see some of the leaders I know, Mr. Peterson, Gregory Peterson and other local leaders. So I look forward to more opportunities where I feel included. So thank you very much. Superintendent Perry, now it's your report time.
There's too many things that I'd like to say now, and so many things I'm not going to say. I think I shared this last meeting on maybe a break about a book that I'm starting to share called Rebel Girls Lead. And so it is Women's History Month. And I reflect a lot on what it means to lead as a female, and how at times there is just different treatment of female leaders still in our country today. So I guess I would encourage us to think in terms of how can we elevate our girls in our systems. And what I want to say to any female leaders that were watching tonight, I think it is important that we show emotion and lead with our heart. I think that makes for strong female leadership. But I think I also could demonstrate that even in times that are really hard, and when we lead with our heart, it's also really important to come back with strength. And I hope I modeled that for our young female students who may have been watching tonight. So anyway, with that, Rebel Girls Lead, 25 Tales of Powerful Women, a nighttime story for young girls, starting as young as 5. I just think it's really important for us to see those models for our kids starting very young. So with that, thank you for the opportunity to give you a few comments tonight.
Thank you very much. Now it is 9:14 p.m., 3/15/2021. The meeting is adjourned. Good night, be well.